do what I listen. This show means a lot to Melissa in a very different way of what it means to Teresa. I think, to your point, listen, I think anybody who watches the show can see that Melissa wants to be the top dog, and she has trouble with Teresa constantly winning in the end. And this, I'm gonna tell you, it was the season where Danielle Staub, one of my favorites of all time.
Yes.
It was the season where Danielle Staub, unfortunately, Melissa, like, Teresa told me to pull the hair. What I saw was this excitement of Melissa getting the tea. Like, well, she did what? And I think in Melissa's mind, she was like, oh, baby, it's going down.
What if I told you that everything we thought we knew about Carlos King, Maurice Scott, and Kimmi Scott might have just been flipped upside down? Because this isn't just another reality TV rumor. This is something deeper, something messier, something that feels a little too real. It all started with a leaked contract tied to Love and Marriage Huntsville, and at first, people didn't take it seriously. Fans thought it was just gossip, another exaggerated story floating around online. But then, small details started lining up. Conversations changed, energy shifted, and suddenly what seemed like speculation began to feel like truth. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Because this leak didn't just hint at behind-the-scenes tension, it exposed a system, one that may have quietly pushed Maurice and Kimmi out, not because they failed, but because they stopped playing the game.
Keep it all the way real on this podcast today, because I am pissed. Robin admitting that she hid her story from the world on the show that pays you is a slap in the face to everyone involved, including the audience. And the fact that you have the audacity to go on your podcast to reveal this. We spent this entire half-assed season with these made-up storylines about Chris Bassett. And yes, I'm gonna say made up, because I allegedly was told that a few of the housewives had a meeting before filming about what the storyline was going to be, and that this Chris Bassett stuff was part of that conversation. I've always said there was something off about this season, and now I know what it is. None of y'all are living.
But before we get into what the contract really revealed, you need to understand why this hit so hard. Because Maurice and Kimmi weren't just cast members, they were the couple people believed in. From the very beginning, their relationship felt different. While other couples leaned into chaos, arguments, and dramatic confrontations, Kimmi and Maurice brought something rare to reality TV: balance. Their story wasn't built on screaming matches or fake tension. It was built on growth. Maurice came into the spotlight carrying real baggage, legal struggles, complicated relationships, a past that wasn't exactly easy to explain away. And the thing is, he never tried to hide it. That's what made people pay attention. He showed flaws, he showed mistakes, and whether you agreed with him or not, you could see he was trying to evolve. Then there was Kimmi, calm, strong, grounded. She didn't need attention to prove her worth. She didn't chase moments. She created them just by being real. And when she opened up about her battle with cancer, everything changed. That wasn't entertainment anymore. That was life. Watching her go through treatments while still showing up, still supporting her family, still standing beside Maurice, it hit people in a way reality TV rarely does. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't exaggerated. It was raw.
This reminded me that you can't focus on the noise of the outside world. And unfortunately, a lot of people do. A lot of people focus on the noise, and a lot of people enter the dark space of the noise to benefit them. And when you are a person who lives your life with good grace, good intentions, and a good heart, no person, place, or thing can infiltrate your life.
And for a while, it worked. Fans connected with them on a deeper level. They weren't perfect, but they were honest. And in a world where reality TV often rewards chaos, they stood out by choosing peace. But here's the problem with that. Peace doesn't always bring ratings, and in reality TV, ratings are everything. At first, production leaned into their story, the growth, the healing, the real-life struggles. But slowly, something began to shift. You could feel it. Scenes started changing. Conversations felt more forced. Moments that once felt natural started carrying tension that didn't quite belong. And that's when the pressure started building.
We have to work harder to get what we deserve, right? And I was such a huge part of that, along with other producers and everybody else involved too. But I moved to Atlanta to do that show because I was invested in making it #1.
Because being on a show like this doesn't just mean living your life, it means performing it. There are expectations, unspoken rules, and sometimes direct instructions. If there's no drama, producers will find a way to create it. If there's no conflict, they'll push for it. And if you resist, that's where things get complicated. Maurice and Kimmi weren't the type to manufacture problems just for screen time. They'd already gone through enough in real life. The last thing they wanted was to turn their relationship into entertainment at the cost of their peace. But according to the leaked contract, that may have been exactly what was expected of them.
Left only because I felt the need to start my production company. That was the only reason. It was
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people think it was scandal. People love this. I was fired. It's all
But
these
you know,
rumors.
so you wasn't fired.
I was never
It
fired.
wasn't the scandal.
It was not a scandal.
It wasn't one of the girls or any of the girls.
No girl ever said Carlos on the show. Like, it was never none of that. But that's the thing, and you know me. Listen, this could be a bad thing or not.
Okay.
I don't feel the need to defend myself publicly.
And this is where everything changes, because the contract didn't just outline filming schedules or appearance fees. It revealed control, real control. Clauses that suggested cast members had limited say over how their stories were told, requirements about participation in certain scenes, expectations around conflict, engagement, and storyline contribution.
And here's the part that shocked fans the most. There were terms that allowed production to reduce screen time or completely remove cast members if they weren't delivering enough content. Let that sink in. Not enough authenticity, not enough honesty, not enough drama. And suddenly, everything started to make sense. Fans had already noticed the changes. Maurice and Kimmi weren't as present. Their scenes felt shorter. Their storylines seemed incomplete. At first, people thought it was just editing, but now it looked like something else. A slow fade, a quiet exit. And when Carlos King addressed parts of this situation publicly without fully denying the rumors, it only added fuel to the fire. Because instead of clearing things up, it raised more questions. Why would a couple that brought real depth to the show suddenly be pushed aside? Why would their presence shrink when their story was still evolving? And more importantly, what happened behind the scenes that we didn't see? According to insiders, things reached a breaking point when Kimmi began setting boundaries. After everything she had gone through, she didn't want to relive painful moments just for the sake of television. She didn't want to be pushed into emotional situations that felt forced or unnecessary. And honestly, who could blame her? But in the world of reality TV, boundaries can be seen as resistance. And resistance, that can cost you your spot. Maurice, on the other hand, reportedly struggled with how his narrative was being shaped. There were whispers that he didn't agree with certain storylines being pushed onto him, that he felt boxed into a version of himself that didn't reflect who he was anymore. And when both people in a couple start pulling back, production notices, quickly. That's when the shift becomes intentional. Less camera time, fewer scenes, more focus on other cast members who are willing to give the show what it wants. And just like that, you're no longer the center of the story, you're the background. Fans began picking up on it immediately.
something felt off. The chemistry between Maurice and Kimmi was still there, but it was buried under awkward edits and shortened appearances. Moments that should have been explored were cut short. Conversations that needed depth were barely touched. It didn't feel natural, it felt controlled. And then came the rumors, talk of disagreements with production, claims that they were becoming difficult. But here's the truth people don't always talk about. Setting boundaries isn't being difficult. Protecting your peace isn't being uncooperative. But in a system that thrives on emotional exposure, it can be seen that way. And that's where things took a darker turn, because once that label is attached to you, it's hard to shake. Producers start pulling back, storylines get reassigned, and before you even realize it, you're being written out. Not with a big announcement, not with a dramatic goodbye.
But quietly, strategically, almost invisibly. And that's exactly what many fans believe happened to Maurice and Kimmi. The leaked contract didn't just expose rules, it exposed a reality that most viewers never think about, that the people we watch don't always control their own stories. And when they try to, there are consequences. For Maurice and Kimmi, those consequences may have come in the form of lost screen time, reduced presence, and ultimately, an exit that didn't feel like a choice. And emotionally, that kind of shift doesn't just affect a show, it affects everything. Imagine building your life in front of cameras, sharing your struggles, your growth, your most vulnerable moments, only to be told, directly or indirectly, that it's not enough anymore, that your real life needs to be more dramatic, more intense, more entertaining. That pressure doesn't just stay on set, it follows you home, it seeps into your relationship. It changes how you communicate, how you trust, how you show up for each other. For Kimmi, after facing something as serious as cancer, the idea of being pushed into emotional performances must have felt exhausting. For Maurice, trying to redefine himself while being constantly pulled back into old narratives couldn't have been easy. And together, that weight builds, silently, slowly, until something has to give. Maybe it wasn't a huge fight. Maybe it wasn't a dramatic breakdown. Maybe it was just a quiet decision to step back, to protect what matters, even if it meant losing something big. Because at the end of the day, no show, no matter how popular, is worth your peace. And now, here we are, with fans asking questions, with clips being analyzed, with a leaked contract that changed the way people see everything. But here's the twist no one expected. This might not be the end. Because sometimes being pushed out isn't a loss. Sometimes it's a reset. Maurice and Kimmi built something real, and real doesn't just disappear just because the cameras stop rolling. If anything, their story might finally be able to breathe, without pressure, without expectations, without someone behind the scenes deciding what should happen next. And maybe that's the part we don't talk about enough, that walking away, or being forced to, can sometimes be the best thing that ever happens to you. So now the question isn't just what happened, it's what comes next. Will they return in a different way? Will they tell their story on their own terms? Or will this chapter close quietly, leaving fans to wonder what could have been? One thing is certain. This situation pulled back the curtain on reality TV in a way we don't often see. It reminded us that behind every scene, there's a story we're not being told. And sometimes, the most important moments happen when the cameras aren't rolling. So what do you think? Did Carlos King make a business decision, or did Maurice and Kimmi deserve better? Were they protecting their peace, or did they simply stop giving the show what it needed? And if they really are gone, is that a loss for the show or a win for them? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about reality TV. It's about control, it's about truth, and it's about what happens when real life refuses to be turned into entertainment. Let me know your thoughts below, because this story, it's far from over.